Why do I think that we are starting to see so many people depart from the lie that is gender dysphoria?
But you're the one going around claiming that you're trans, so you're stealing my medical condition to say that it's LGBTQ plus expression erasure is the most nonsensical take.
I think the majority of people understand that some people truly are transsexual, but the majority of people are not.
Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Cassie Speaks Up, and today I have Skye. Want to go ahead and tell everyone about you, Skye?
Hey everyone, my name is Skye Vitterity. I'm a YouTuber, author, trans woman with 20 years of experience who talks about politics, trans issues, and other social issues with nuance, compassion, and a nonpartisan take.
I'm so excited to have you here, Skye. Before we get into the video, what socials can they follow you on?
They can find me on X. I'm also on YouTube, and I check my email daily.
Alrighty. And before going into this, I want to make sure that I want everyone to go over to Skye's channel and subscribe. She is amazing. Also, hit that like button, and after the video, tell us down in the comments what you thought about this video. Let's get to it. And another thing I want to say is I love your videos, Skye. You're so analytical. I love watching your videos, and I really look forward to doing this collab with you.
I'm super excited to be here. I cannot wait to dive into these videos and articles today.
All right, let's get to it.
It's not if somebody regrets to medically transition, it is when.
I regret my bottom surgery. It's not funny, but laughing is a coping mechanism.
I was convinced into thinking I was a trans woman.
Ooh, the older transes have spoken, and the shit is getting real. This is a detransition trend after a trans trend that I have been keeping an eye on for the last 5 years or so. At first, it was as simple as noticing that the overwhelming number of young trans people are female and the majority of older trans people are male.
What trend? What trend are you talking about there, Ariel? You showed a quote unquote older trans person who is basically coming out as full force detransitioner with the full monetization of a large backing behind them, a lot of people promoting them, but the words and the actions aren't really matching them, and you're going to bring them up again later. But we're not really seeing that older detrans spilling the tea like you're talking about. So that narrative that you're starting the video off, you're not going to carry that through. What you are actually going to do is you're going to show one very extremely exaggerated point of view to try and turn that into a use case. And I find that extremely disturbing from someone who has respected you for a very long time for your authenticity and your attention to detail in these matters. We'll get into this more as the video progresses, but I wanted to call that out at the beginning.
All right. And one thing I noticed is that Ariella put up something from the United Kingdom and not from the United States. I'm wondering why.
It looks like it's just like the like she's pointing towards the rapid onset gender dysphoria kind of contagion aspect, because this trans survey, if I recall this graph correctly, I think this is one of the ones that was part of the CAST report. So this is already a couple years old, and it would be an older one too. This would be very in line with what Abigail Schreier would be reporting on in her book, and that's even older than I think this study. And it's showing natal females versus natal males and how it is skewing younger. And you're not seeing that trend of older females who are transitioning, saying that it is most likely a social contagion in the younger females, as transsexuality is something that is skewed primarily male throughout history.
That was certainly strange and definitely a societal, cultural phenomenon and not a biological or chemical one.
You know someone in their 30s, almost 40, who uses they, them pronouns.
Then it became a game of what other mental illness does this person have instead of gender dysphoria. In this study of trans patients, the frequency of personality disorders was 81.4%. The most frequent personality disorder was narcissistic personality disorder, 57%.
Source wasn't linked fully. You just showed it on the screen, which meant you couldn't fact check that. When you try to fact check it, that particular study or survey that she's pointing towards actually looks at comorbidities, which is something that people inside the trans community talk about quite frequently. Not trans activists, but actual transsexuals. When we talk about long-term health care, comorbidities is one of the things that professional gatekeepers, i.e., mental health professionals, used to actually look at and screen for as part of the process prior to self ID. And that's why I'm against self ID laws. Self ID laws enable people who are these type of narcissists, these type of um, fetishists, these type of exhibitionists, these type of people to take up a mantle or a label and utilize it under the guise of trans, because the umbrella has been so flattened and widened that anything can be classified as it. And when you do that, you eliminate the nuance and the ability to properly screen and gatekeep, which means that you're basically going to allow all these different comorbidities to run rampant. It does kind of imply what Ariel was saying with the individual that had the bull ring and all the facial piercings, but that doesn't necessarily mean that every trans person will have these comorbidities, or that a true transsexual, and I don't like true transsexual and like only certain people are transsexual, but someone who is transsexual and gone through a proper gate-kept medical process probably has had those type of comorbidities addressed or dealt with through therapy, through mental health professionals, through years of actually working on themselves as a human being.
I'm curious how Ariel Escarcella is saying that people are romanticizing having autism. That's a very interesting stance.
I think when she says like that, I think it's kind of like on TikTok how they have the autism is kind of like, oh, I'm autistic, and they just kind of throw it around like, I'm autistic, I'm neurodivergent. Like it's almost like a greeting now.
Mhm.
Like it's like, hi, I'm Skye, I am this whole list of mental health conditions, as if it was like some sort of medieval ritual where you would just say, I am so and so, son of so and so, daughter of so and so, like this whole list of like your lineage or your family crest or something. Like it's a badge of honor. And I think that's what she might be referring to with the romanticization of autism, and maybe even trans to some extent.
That in this article, the world has also romanticized things like autistic people, autism. A lot of these people with autism believe that they're trans when they're not. Then it became, well, are they lying about the rate of detransition? Because there are so many conflicting studies, and media is just not helping with any of it. One of my least favorite posts on Instagram, Matt, said 1% of people regret their gender affirming treatment. My friend
I hate that statistic, the 1%. The study that they used to come up with that, for anyone that's unaware, it's a self-administered study of follow-up care that was done 6 months after a surgical procedure. It's not even long term. So it's how many people regret their surgery? Oh, we checked 6 months after and it was less than 1%. Okay, well, you have people that are still in a honeymoon phase. You have people that have buyer's regret, sunk fallacy cost. You have a whole bunch of other things that aren't accounted for in this study. They also leave out the fact that 40% of respondents to that study were not captured. So 40% of the people that were included in the initial part were not captured in the other part. So that's a 40% discrepancy. 40% of your base is missing. They like to say, oh, more people regret this than knee surgery. Or, sorry, regret knee surgery more than getting bottom surgery. Well, that's clearly not true. But there's also a lot more knee surgeries that are performed. The reason that it is like this is there's no long-term follow-up. I had my surgical procedure done by Marcy Bowers, who is one of the most well-known surgeons, one of the best surgeons, not one of the best people in terms of trans healthcare and the positions they advocate, but they are a gifted surgeon. They do great work, and that's why I chose them. I went to them. Their long-term follow-up care plan was basically, hey, all right, we'll have you come back to the clinic, and, after about 5 days, we'll teach you how to dilate, and guess what? Then you're free to go back on a plane. You can go home, and if you have any questions, call us. We may or may not help you. And that was literally it. Everything else has been my general practitioner having to figure out, having to research, and me having to figure it out with them on my own. Long-term healthcare for transsexuals doesn't exist. And that study is just so implicitly wrong because there's no categorization or tracking method or anyone that is invested in actually accurately counting those statistics.
My friend Christina, who does this sort of thing for a living, clapped back on his ass and said this post is extremely misleading. 1% regret is from a study with a ton of methodological flaws, and 28 to 40% loss to follow up, which is extraordinarily high. That low rate of regret was from an entirely different cohort, older adults under a different medical model, compared to the people who we are most concerned about now, teens and young adults under the affirmative model. She also followed that up by saying a recent study found that approximately 75% of detransitioners did not report their detransition to their providers, which creates the false impression that they were satisfied with their transition. A comprehensive review of medical records last year found that 30% of teens and young adults discontinued hormone use after 4 years, which in itself is a detransition. Another U.S. study from this year that challenges the notion that detransition is rare found that 29% of youth changed their requests for hormone treatment, surgery, or both. So yeah, this is a thing that's happening more and more.
I do know because of like life circumstances for in my personal life, I actually had to like kind of detransition. It wasn't because like I wanted to, but because I was in a situation where I absolutely like I couldn't afford like my health care because I made really bad choices in like other areas of my life. And I like just like Ariella Scarcella said, I did not report it to like my doctors. I literally just like vanished. So there was no way for them to know like, hey, what's going on? Is this person happy or whatever?
The other thing that's not accounted for in that is you have social transition, which is counted, which is not necessarily part of the medical transition, but they are counted in the transition numbers. So when the trans people are counted, they're counted whether they're medical or social, but they're not counted as detransitioners or desisters in these metrics if they don't medically transition and report it. So to consider yourself trans, you just say, I'm trans. But to detransition, you now have to jump through all of these hoops to be counted. Well, why is it so much harder to be counted as a detransitioner for accurate reporting than it is to identify as trans? That's one of the things that transsexuals who are looking for accurate reporting and medical data, like myself, keep saying we need accurate data, accurate reporting, accurate studies. And the current model, WPATH primarily, has been against that type of data collection because that type of data collection, it doesn't work in their profit model because WPATH is a private organization that does operate to generate a profit. And a lot of these other organizations do the same, and they're all entrenched in trying to generate a profit, not in the long-term care results. And that's a main problem when it comes to this type of supposed healthcare.
I also think that like if people detransition, like let me backtrack a little bit. When people want to transition, they're very excited about it, and they want to go to the doctor, go get the hormones and everything like that. And I feel like whenever people detransition, they kind of feel, especially if they haven't had bottom surgery, for instance, or whatever, or let's say for like male to females, let's say that they didn't develop that much for breast tissue, they can literally just like get off their hormones and start like reverting back. They don't actually have to go see a doctor. So I don't know why someone would be like, hey, I'm gonna go to the doctor and do something, because it's probably not something that they're excited about.
Exactly. You're at the beginning, you're in that honeymoon phase. Everything's new. It's Christmas morning. Oh my gosh, I'm going to get these hormones. They're going to make my life perfect. Reddit has told me everything's going to be so much better. I'm in these trans groups. I'm going to be a woman. I'm going to be so cute and girly. Ooh, woo. Everything's going to be amazing. And then the reality is none of that happens. You're now just the same person you were before, now with a different set of hormones going through your body, which is going to mess you up mentally and physically. And you're going to start dealing with a whole bunch of stuff. And you're going to have to mentally process this. Your healthcare providers probably aren't trained on that because they're trained on the affirmative model. So they're not going to know how to help you. They just know, oh, you're trans. Okay, cool. Let me write you a prescription. Not, okay, well, you're dealing with this. Is this related to transition or is this related to this? They're not going to talk these things out with you. So you get a lot of trans people who are like, I'm on HRT, but now I'm confused because I was told this and told that. And then they just stop taking the medicine because they're just frustrated. It's the same as like when you're playing a video game and you rage quit, or you see your dad like, screw this, I'm done. He slams the wrench down and he walks away from whatever project, and then you have a half repaired whatever appliance in your house that doesn't work. It's the same concept with detransitioning for a lot of these people. They just give up and walk away. Who's counting that? No one. We have no way to met it. We have no one that's doing these follow-ups. Doctors aren't. There's no incentive. There's no researchers doing the follow-ups. And part of the CAST report called out this type of behavior, that there was a gaping hole. And I don't know if you saw, but the Trump administration this week released and said, hey, we would like the NIH to do some studies on detransition help, detransition rates, and that sort of stuff, because it is a glaring hole. And now that's being labeled as being transphobic because it's the complete opposite of the narrative that's been pushed for the last 15 to 20 years through a lot of organizations. So you don't have to make something transphobic. Like data is just data, and data is important. It helps all of us make better decisions, whether we are trans or not, whether we're on the side of the trans movement or we're on the side of the TERFs. Whatever side you're on, data helps. It helps us make better healthcare decisions. It helps us improve the system. It helps us go, okay, self-ID failed. What's a better system look like? Right now, we're all just talking in abstracts, and no one has any motivation or incentive to change. The data, we can point at and say, here's the data that shows your model's messed up. Here's the data that says this model will be better. And that's the data we need. So
I feel like a lot of people in the trans community don't want to go after that data because they're afraid that it's going to be used to invalidate like the reasons why people transition, or try to make it seem like it's not like a real thing or something like that. And honestly, when it comes to like science and data, I think a lot of people don't realize that you have to look at when things go wrong and incorporate that data into the bigger picture so that you can make things better for like the future.
see, and I look at it like this. I personally, no amount of data is going to invalidate my experience and what I've gone through. What the data will do was help make sure that the wrong people coming up behind me don't end up down the wrong pathway. Because what I want is people that are in my situation to get the care they need, and people who are not in my situation to get the care they need. What I don't want is people who will not benefit from the care that I got and the treatment that I got going down this road, when really what they need is a completely different path because someone just affirmed them because they came in and said, I'm trans, when really they're just trying to escape from a sexually abusive household or a past trauma or feeling of inadequacy that could be handled by just conversations or a healthy relationship with another human being. Things that can happen when you're introduced to these things as an adult or as a teenager, so that you're not medicalized, because a lot of what people consider trans now is more escapism from the real world. It's performative in that they're performing a role outside of who they really are. It's theater as opposed to people that have a medical condition and are actually dealing with something where their life is truly negatively impacted on a daily basis and they are trying to overcome it. I see posts where people are like, oh, they say gender dysphoria can't be overcome. Well, mine was. And you see, a person with long hair and a dress standing next to an old picture of themselves as a guy. And you're just like, okay, great. You didn't have gender dysphoria. You didn't. I'm sorry. That's not how gender dysphoria works. It doesn't go away. This is a treatment. And if you're only dealing with a treatment, then where's the data? But if you're going to sit there and say that your gender dysphoria went away entirely, then I'm going to say you didn't have it, and this was not the same thing. So you're not a transsexual, and you're not talking for me. But you're the one going around claiming that you're trans, so you're stealing my medical condition for whatever you're placating as, and that gets wrapped up in these studies as well, because again, the umbrella is flattened so that everything falls under it. And who knows what trans is anymore except trannies.
And it's not just the younger kids, right? Older people are starting to come out and regret transitioning as well.
Full ability to have intercourse because the vagina that they make is so small. So anytime I tried to have intercourse, it was extremely painful and it wouldn't happen. So these surgeries are nothing more than plastic surgery. They don't create, the phalluses that they create for female to males are really hideous looking. I've had several female to male friends, and you look at it and you just go, oh God, you paid for that. It's horrible. The sex change didn't solve my discomfort. The doctors who are honest will say that the gender dysphoria is always there. And it's because the confusion is, it's not so much, it starts out being about your anatomy, but really what you don't like yourself.
I love this person. They're sitting there talking about their sex life with their plastic surgery created vaginoplasty, and they're talking about it. And it's just like, yes, that is a plastic surgery. It is designed to mimic or be a facsimile of a vagina, but it's not an actual vagina. And you're going out there talking about how these are bad surgeries, but your expectations for the surgery seem to be out of line for what you expected. So I went into surgery knowing that it would probably be about 2 fingers wide and around because that's the way the procedure is done. I looked up the procedure. They use 2 fingers to hold the inverted penile tissue in place. That's why it's usually about 2 fingers deep and round, and that's why you have to dilate to stretch. That's why dilation is so important. And when you look at this person, they're like, oh, they don't create vaginas. This isn't useful. Well, yeah, I mean, they can be. There are plenty of people that have them because they take care of them. They follow the procedures. They stretch them. They didn't dilate. But they went in knowing that this is a possible outcome. You seem to think that you were going in and getting a natal vagina, which means that you went in for a cosmetic procedure thinking you were getting something that you weren't getting. You did not understand what you were purchasing. And this is a problem with trans activism and what they are selling you versus the reality. If you're going to have plastic surgery, I don't care if it's a brow lift, I don't care if it's an eye lift, a tummy tuck, BBL, or a vaginoplasty, do your research. Different doctors have different procedures, they do different techniques, they have different success rates. They will tell you up front. There's plenty of information out there, good and bad, on all of these doctors. But the trans community hides this from a lot of trans people. Reddit has a whole thread. It goes up, and then it'll come down within 24 hours. I scour it constantly to try and grab some of these images so I can talk about these stories on my channel and put a human element behind them. Because at the end of the day, these are real people, and these are real people that are having real regrets. But the regrets almost always seem to be they thought they were purchasing one thing and they got something else, but the person that was selling it was very upfront. I'm selling you cosmetic surgery.
Sometimes I wonder when these people get surgeries that don't have the outcomes that they want. I wonder if sometimes whether or not they went to like a bad surgeon or a good surgeon, or if they try to like cheap out on something. Because I know some people go like to Thailand, they can get like a surgery for like $3,500. Obviously, it's not going to be exactly the same as if someone came to another doctor where they have like so much experience, and then and they do a lot of them, and then you can actually go back for like follow up if there are complications.
And then there's different techniques and procedures too, because you can have the colloid, you can have just the penile inversion. There's 2-step, there's 3-step. There's, Bowers has her technique. Supon has his. Dr. Broussard had his technique. Metzger had his technique. I'm going old school because I'm old. There were all of these different techniques that were out there from these popular people, and they got taught to different people. And then there's different oh gosh, I can't remember her name, from Philadelphia, but she's a well-known surgeon who is absolutely horrible for her aftercare, for her treatment of trans patients, for actual surgical results. And she was getting highly recommended by so many people because she was inexpensive, She was in the US and she was willing to promote at a time when a lot of people weren't. And she was like the counterbalance to Marcy Bowers, but she doesn't do it anymore because she's just notorious as a butcher in trans circles. They almost cast her out in a weird way. And I just wonder if this is someone that is not upset at the surgery itself, but they're upset at themselves. This is a person that is having that regret because they either didn't do the research, they went in with bad expectations, or they're just like, I miss my penis, I shouldn't have transitioned. And that's very common too for a lot of people that go into this who don't have the medical condition and the full medical screening, because again, we don't know how long this person transitioned. I mean, they are elderly, they're older than I am, but we don't know if they transitioned 2 years ago, 4 years ago, 30 years ago. So
Here's what a few of my friends have to say on the topic.
Why do I think that we are starting to see so many people depart from the lie that is gender dysphoria and gender identity disorder? Look, transgenderism is a lie. It's factually incorrect. You cannot transition your gender. So I don't believe that we are seeing an influx of detransitioners. I think really what we are seeing are people waking up to the reality that is truth. The new 2025 Trump administration has done a great job of instilling what's true. And yeah, a little tough love has been going on. You know, passports can't have your make-believe gender on them anymore. The rest of the country is seeing that and saying, wow, maybe I can't just put an X on my passport or put a female marker on my passport if I've got a boob job or whatever you've done. There are so many things you can do to your body. Just because you're a man with a pair of fake tits, it doesn't make you a woman. It doesn't give you the right to have an F on your passport. And these things, saying that they would prior, are contributing to gender identity disorder. For me personally, I suffered for over 10 years with gender identity disorder, and it wasn't until a month ago that I've woken up. My reason was getting away from the distractions, getting away from the community, getting to know myself and love myself, and realize I can dress how I want to dress. I can wear whatever. I can wear a little makeup. I can keep my hair long. But I don't need to think that I need to mutilate my body, take harmful chemicals in order to fulfill the lie that is I can become a woman, because I can't.
I wonder what's going through Nisa's mind whenever going on and saying, "Oh, gender identity disorder or gender dysphoria is not a real thing." Like, I'm really confused, like how someone can think that that's not a real thing. Like, and then to say that they're glad that they didn't mutilate their body. Like, then what did hormones do to you? Is mutilating your body only if you get surgeries or something like that, or have a surgical procedure?
I have so much that I could say about that clip. There's just so much to break down. I mean, so Nisa come across at the beginning, and there's this aggression. So there's instantaneous male aggression. They're mansplaining to everyone what is going on, and they're very definitive. This is not real. This is bullshit. And I'm telling you why. You have to listen to me. Already turning me off. And it's not even like I don't disagree with a lot of what he's saying later on in the video. I if we went back and played parts of it, there are parts of it I will agree with. But at the very beginning, gender identity disorder used to be called gender identity disorder transsexualism, and it was very specific in the DSM-3, DSM-4. It got watered down to gender dysphoria, and I think the DSM-5 definition, which is what Nisa is talking about, I think is very harmful because, again, that flattens the umbrella, it widens the definition. It's very similar to what happened with autism. They changed the way autism was diagnosed. They added a whole bunch of conditions under the autism umbrella. Suddenly, wow, all these people suddenly have autism. Why is autism spiking? You changed the definition. Well, you changed the definition of trans. Why do we have so many more trans people? Well, they're all trans because we just shoved them all under this umbrella. So you have a lot of people there that would not have been transsexual in the same way. So there's a lot of nuance that Neza is leaving out there that makes me instantaneously disagree with him. So he has turned me off, and I am struggling with the pronouns here because it is very, very sudden.
Same here.
So if I mess up, I do apologize to anyone who's watching. Now, Neza goes a little bit further and goes, "Oh, it took me stepping back from the community." Okay, I'll do you one better. I don't hang around with a lot of the community. I don't hang around in Reddit. I'm not on TikTok. I live in a pretty normal life, and for the majority of my life, the only time I'm ever around trans people is when I talk on YouTube. The first time I reconnected with the community, I went to a Blair White event, and that was for my birthday. Otherwise, I had gone to a couple little events and talked to a lot of people I knew for a very long time who were trans, or I would get introduced to new people at my job who were trans because I was trans, and people obviously can tell that I'm trans. I'm not hiding the fact that I'm trans, but I'm also not going out and saying, give me access to everything. There are people that have gender dysphoria and gender identity disorder. It is an actual condition that has been diagnosed and has been prevalent in people. Whether you want to believe it or not, it is something that has been around primarily in males for a very long time, probably as long as recorded human history. I'm not going to transwash history because I don't believe in that. There's plenty of trans people out there, they'll make their own history. Neza goes a little bit further, though, and says, "It just took me getting to know myself." Okay, so it's amazing that you came to terms with knowing yourself after 10 years of transitioning and decided to detransition. Congratulations. That's very impressive. A lot of people do that. They realize that I transitioned for the wrong reason. I'm not really trans, and they detransition. And they typically end up being very angry about it because they feel tricked, they feel misled, they feel like they've done something to themselves, and they take it out on the community rather than introspectively pointing it back at themselves. This is what this feels like. And with today's climate of everything being incentivized or financialized, there's a built-in audience that's already waiting to hear what Neza has to say. So Neza has an opportunity here where Neza can say, hey, I used to be trans and now I'm not, and I'm going to blow the lid off of this. And it feels like they've come across this at a time where they've just able to position themselves right at the start of a detransition movement and make themselves a spokesperson so that they can be the male to female detransition version of a Laura Becker or a Chloe Cole, where they can get to go around and be the person that everyone has on. And Ariel seems to be spotlighting that in this video. Whether that's Ariel's intention is to promote this person in that light and give them that platform, it really does feel like that with the amount of times Ariel has retweeted that particular segment from this video on Instagram, on X, a couple other platforms, with those same talking points that are very divisive and harmful to a lot of Ariel's transsexual supporters like myself, who've liked Ariel for pushing back on this but being respectful towards transsexuals. And she does have a disclaimer at the end about some of what I'm talking about, but it does feel like she's just like, look, I'm going to throw the baby out with the bathwater because Neza's coming in guns blazing saying there is no baby in the bathwater. And I'm saying, hold on, there is a baby with the bathwater. And in fact, not only is there a baby with the bathwater, but there's a reason the baby is in the bathwater, and that's fresh bathwater. And we need to have a conversation about it because the bathwater's still warm. Let's deal with all this.
I truly do think we are at a crossroads, and I honestly don't know where we're headed to next. I think the majority of people understand that some people truly are transsexual, but the majority of people are not. There are a lot of other mental health issues at play, and most of these people are just gonna wind up being big old FAGS and DYKES. But let me know what you guys think in the comments. Do you think this is going to continue to happen, or do you think we are at a standstill, or do you think we're going to start backpedaling as a community and as a society?
The next thing we're going to go over is Utah becomes first state to ban the LGBTQ plus pride flags in government buildings and schools. And one thing I noticed about this article right away was actually the title. Like it, and they put the pride flag, and then like when I saw this, it looked like it was specifically targeting LGBT stuff, and I can understand like why a lot of people might like at face value believe that that is exactly what this is about. But alrighty, so this one says Utah became the first state to prohibiting flying LGBT pride flags at schools and all government buildings after Republican governor announced he was allowing a ban on unsanctioned flag displays to become law without his signature. So, allowing a ban unsanctioned flag displays. So, right there, the very first paragraph out of this, they're automatically admitting that it's not just pride flags. If you want to read between the lines here. Says Governor Spencer Cox, who made the announcement late Thursday night, said he continues to have serious concerns with the policy, but chose not to reject it because his veto would likely be overridden by a Republican-controlled legislature. Starting May 7th, state or local government buildings will be fined $500 a day for flying any flag other than the United States flag, the Utah state flag, military flags, or a short list of others approved by lawmakers. Political flags supporting a certain candidate or party, such as President Donald Trump's signatures, Make America Great Again flags are not allowed. So I don't understand why they are making this all about pride in the title and for the picture. I don't know if it's about clickbaity, but if you go down, people can't like put these kind of flags up with this kind of stuff. They can't put up pride flags, but I don't know. You have any thoughts so far?
I mean, so far, when I'm looking at this, the bill, and I read through the bill, because anytime I read an article, I always go to the bill. I want to see what the bill says, not the reporting. And I read the bill. It seems pretty straightforward. It's basically saying that in the state of Utah, if you are a government or a state-funded building, you will not fly inside or outside any flag that is not basically a state flag, a historical flag, the national flag, a military flag, a college flag, a Native American flag, and then if there's like an after school event like the Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts, you can put the flag up for the event and then take it down at the end of the event. So it just seems like since these are multi-use spaces and they are funded by all of the taxpayers of Utah, that they want to make it where the flags are appropriate for all of the citizens of the state of Utah. Not every citizen is going to be okay with a pride flag. Not every citizen is going to be okay with Make America Great, because I know this will surprise people. There are Democrats that live in Utah. But I don't see a problem with that. I think when you look at a multi-use space and you're using taxpayer dollars, that if you're going to use these, particularly schools is the one that they targeted in a lot of the headlines and the reporting. It's schools can't fly pride flags, and they made it sound like it was just specifically targeting gays in schools, and that's not the case. So this right here just seems to be very kind of straightforward, in line with a common cause, common purpose, one united America kind of thing, as opposed to we're going to let every little cause be part and parcel and pick and choose on these publicly funded. And I think that's divisive when you start saying pride flags are okay, but Make America Great isn't. We'll allow this this breast cancer awareness, but we're not going to allow this, testicular cancer awareness. Like when you start picking and choosing and letting the government kind of pick and choose which causes are okay in government buildings for year round, I think that's a slippery slope, and you start making it potentially where you could weaponize different ideologies and things. And I think we're seeing some backlash from that. So I don't have a problem with this.
I do know for a fact that if we had like MAGA flags everywhere, that the people who are saying that to erase LGBTQ plus expression would not hold that same opinion. I know that for a fact.
So replace LGBTQ with something else. Replace it with Ukraine. Replace it with Hamas. Replace it with Israel. Replace it with Russia. Suddenly, the narrative would change. The same people that are saying this bill is against these things would suddenly be for it because they're suddenly are like, wait, we're not on the same side as those particular flags. We don't want them flying. So they would be for it, but they're only against it because it's their political affiliation, their political group that they feel is being targeted, but it's not. It's literally everyone. If you're not one of these basic groups of flags that is very mundane, again, historical flags, state flags, national flags, college flags, military flags, Native American flags, Paralympic flags, right? Very standard flags. You are exempt. This is not about LGBTQ. That is just a talking point that's used to get people riled up. This is literally just people being political and using identity as a cudgel to say, yeah, the other side is doing something we don't like, and let's paint it rainbow to get people to listen to us. And I'm sorry, in this instance, I'm going to agree with the Republican sponsors. Political neutrality is important. You need to have places where you can go and not have these different flags fly. Students should be able to go to school and learn and not have to worry about, hey, my teacher just put up this new flag. What does this mean? Mom, what is this flag? And then come home with a picture. And then your mom has to look up the flag and understand, right? Like, these things are things that children do. Mom, what's a trans person? And then all of a sudden, in this little community, these children are coming home because they saw a flag, they saw something flying. Mom, what's that? These are kids. These are kids, and they're being shown this. So to say that it's LGBTQ plus expression erasure is the most nonsensical take you could have on this issue.
So I personally believe that this new politically neutrality and pretty much as clean a slate of all the flags that we put up and leaving it to just like government organizations. I'm not government organizations, like government flags, like the country flag, the U.S. flag, the state flag, and stuff like that is actually a good thing. So that way, like, because everyone could go into that spot and not be like, hey, I have a problem with that flag. It's going to be pretty much, it's going to be like the same experience for everybody, no matter like what your views are.
Yeah, I mean, when you go into a government building or drive past a government building, it should reflect all of the citizens of the state that you're in. And if you start slicing and dicing and saying, oh, we're flying this flag or this flag or this flag, then you're putting one group of residents or citizens above the other. And in a country that is, predicated on all men are created equal, if you're rising some above others, then you're already going against the founding principles. So I think having a law that just says you can't have these pride flags, I don't think it's transphobic. I don't think it's homophobic. I don't think it's erasure. I think it's a good way to ensure that you represent all of the citizens in the same way, and you do that in a way that's least offensive to everyone. And you do that by offending everyone equally. Ban it all. You offend everyone equally.
I kind of feel
It's
like
South Park, the Christmas episode. Very early on, they do the Christmas play, and it's like, you can't have Jesus, you can't have Santa, and then they're like, what is this? But that's eventually what you're gonna nip with. But you have to do that to make it bland, because bland is what some people need and some people like, and then you go from bland, and if you want spice, you get your bowl of bland and you can add a little spice to it. But as long as it's, your spice and it's only in your bowl, but you can't go up to the big bowl and add all the spice. It's like the people that spike the punch bowl at the party. You pour the whole bottle of vodka in and everyone gets drunk. That's not the way you do it. You just add a little to your drink and you're fine. And that's kind of what these bills are, in my opinion.
The underlying tone that I get from these kind of articles is they don't directly say it, but the underlying tone is kind of like, "Oh, you are encroaching on my First Amendment right," and then trying to make it out like, "Hey, if you don't fly these flags, then you're not letting us represent ourselves." So it's not like directly saying that, but that's the feeling that I get.
And I could see that. But the other thing is you have your First Amendment as an individual, but these are government buildings. So because this is a government building, the government has control over the buildings and what takes place around them. And the government, because it's the government, when you agree to work for the government, you agree to certain terms and conditions. It's like when you enlist in the military or you agree to work for any of the federal departments or the state departments. You agree that in exchange for your labor and your time and working as a public servant, you'll get compensated, you get retirement benefits, etc. And one of the things that you give up is some of your autonomy while you're in that place. It's just like when you work your regular job, right? You go to your normal job, you can't show up to a lot of professional jobs wearing whatever you want. You'll get sent home. You can't come in wearing certain things. Some of the people that come in with like massive face piercings, they get told you can't have them. You got to take them out. Or this is just the flag version of that. And I don't see why this would be any different other than people wanting to make it into a big deal to try and raise money and campaign and use it to fear and say, look, they're coming after you. And that's not what's happening. This is benign and reasonable, but it's being blown out of proportion by activists on one side of the equation to make it seem far more nefarious than it actually is.
All right, so everyone, thank you so much for watching another episode of Cassie Speaks Up with us. And once again, thank you, Skye, for joining me for this. I had such a great time.
I had a fantastic time. It was great. I can't wait to come back and do this again. But until then, I will catch you and everyone else in the next one. Bye.
Bye. Everyone, that blooper. Bye. It's getting Backstreet Boys. All right.
It's gonna be May. Oh.
Dirty pop. I guess that's in sync.
Be like,
yeah.
I don't know how to tell you this, but I think your dog is racist.
Sorry. Hopefully, my deaf didn't make you. Hopefully, my laugh didn't make you deaf.
I'm sorry, sir. You're gonna have to put the flag down. That is a concealed weapon in this state.
You call me sir? It's ma'am.
It's ma'am.
Yeah. Oh, did I tell you? I actually got an official mic.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah, and it's I got it closer to my mouth, and I put it on top of a Pride and Prejudice VHS thing.
What does it say? It sounds real good. Yeah, well, I identify as an attack helicopter, and I'm claiming territory. No.
I identify as that bitch, so there we go.
Damn it! Damn it! I knew I should have chose that one.